Alright, finally getting to do a proper long-form video, one where I'm actually in front of the camera and not just holding my phone. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I've just been super busy with work because that's obviously my source of income. I got rent to pay and all. And also busy trying to figure out how to be a functional human being, because it's hard sometimes. I know comparing yourself to other people can be a bad thing, but sometimes it's hard not to. I mean, I look around at people my age. I'm 26 going on 27. I know people that are married with kids, multiple kids in some cases, and meanwhile I'm just sitting here like... But while the whole being a functional human being thing is hard to figure out sometimes and doesn't really come so naturally in others, at least I still get to do this. Welcome back to I Want to Talk About, the series where I take a topic, I sit on camera, and I blabber about it. And just because my favorite games of blank legacy years videos are over doesn't mean I'm not going to be making more video game videos. I'm going to be making plenty because obviously I love video games. So as you can tell from the title, today I want to talk about the Donkey Konga series. Might be a bit of a random one to some of you guys, but apparently the fireworks really want me to talk about it. But hey, the series is called I Want to Talk About, and I want to talk about it, so let's do it. Also, sorry if you hear some fireworks in the background. The day that I'm filming this is the day before Memorial Day, so I don't know, people are just lighting off fireworks and crap, you know how it goes. So my apologies if that ends up in the video. But anyway, Donkey Konga, a subset of the larger Donkey Kong series, which many of you are probably familiar with if you are a gamer and you've been a gamer for, I don't know, more than about 20 minutes, then chances are you know who Donkey Kong is. If you were a kid growing up in the 80s, chances are you knew about Donkey Kong from the original arcade Donkey Kong game from 1981. If you were a kid growing up in the 90s, chances are you know about Donkey Kong from the Donkey Kong Country series on the Super Nintendo. And if you're a younger person, then chances are you have a lot of experience with Donkey Kong now, thanks to games like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii and Wii U, which were both re-released on the Switch as well, both developed by Retro Studios. And you're probably getting ready to make some new memories with Nintendo's famous Gorilla, because in just about 2 months, we're going to be getting Donkey Kong Bonanza, the next big Donkey Kong game on Nintendo's upcoming system, the Switch 2. So Donkey Kong's been through a lot of eras, but you may have noticed that I didn't mention anything about the 2000s. And that's because the 2000s for the Donkey Kong series were a pretty transitional period for the franchise. As I mentioned, the Donkey Kong Country series that was on the SNES, as well as eventually Donkey Kong 64 on the Nintendo 64, were both developed by Rare. They had become the primary Donkey Kong developer in the 90s and stuff like that, but in 2002, as many of you know, Rare was sold off to Microsoft, leaving the Donkey Kong franchise without a real primary developer. And as a result, the series went through a period of relative stagnancy without much in the way of mainline titles, and a lot of games that were a lot more experimental and kind of unique, just like spin-offs and things like that, that you kind of looked at, tilted your head to the side and went, is this Donkey Kong? And one of the biggest products of that experimental period with a lot of really unique Donkey Kong-based games was this one, Donkey Konga, which was released in 2003 in Japan, 2004 over here in America, and it was a game that did pretty decent, at least enough to warrant a continuation and a couple more games, but it didn't last super long, and in hindsight, even the legend himself, Reggie Fils-Aimé, the former president of Nintendo, openly admitted that he hated the game. Hey, look, everyone's wrong once in their lives. But yes, Donkey Konga, as you can probably clue in from the box right here, was a rhythm game. A rhythm Donkey Kong game using a pair of bongos that were literally just called the DK bongos. Quite a strange direction for the character coming off of something like Donkey Kong 64, of course. And, I mean, it does help that there were several canceled Donkey Kong games early in the 2000s because of the Rare departure. There was that Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers puzzle game that was turned into It's Mr. Pants. There was Diddy Kong Pilot, which was turned into Banjo Pilot. And then there was that Donkey Kong racing game planned for the GameCube that was going to be turned into a Saberman game, Saberman Stampede, a runoff of the Saberwolf series, but that too got canceled. So suddenly we were left with this empty, open space of, what the hell are we going to do with Donkey Kong? And out of that came a rhythm game. A rhythm game that, believe it or not, was actually the game back in the day that made me want a GameCube as a kid. That's right, even on a system with incredible, amazing, critically acclaimed and beloved games like Super Smash Bros. Melee, Metroid Prime, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and Pikmin, this was the game that made me want a GameCube. What? I was 6. Back off. I mean, I wanted Melee too, of course, but you get what I mean. This was the game that made me really want a GameCube. All the way back in Christmas of 2004, because that commercial really sold me. Seriously, it did. And it's funny to think that, because I know Nintendo, their advertising has a history of being weird, but the GameCube commercials were really something. Like, why was the lighting here so dark in this commercial? Why did it feel so edgy? Is that the right word? And even the original trailer that was released for this game ends with the group finishing the song in Donkey Konga and then playing in an actual band. It's almost like the game was giving the players the message of like, yeah, our game's fun, but just go play real music. But honestly, this worked on me. Donkey Konga basically was like an Americanized version of a very popular franchise in Japan, Taiko no Tatsujin, or as it's sometimes known over here, Taiko Drum Master, with a Donkey Kong coat of paint. Again, a rhythm game, you hit the notes as they go across the little line, you score points, you pass a song or you fail a song. In this game's case, you get coins as you do well in a song, and you can use that to buy harder versions of the same songs, or even sound effects that you could use when playing the songs, with a bongo controller that I wish I brought mine up from my basement so I could show you that I still have mine. But a simple pair of bongos. The left bongo was the yellow note, the right one was the red note, hit them both for the pink note, and then there were clap notes because it had a clap sensor in it. And there were also long notes where you could repeatedly roll the bongos, or repeatedly clap, or just do what I did, where you just take the bongos, put them to your mouth, and then just go, ah! And it reads it as a bunch of claps. And of course, it was a multiplayer game. You could play with up to 4 players. If you played with 2 players in certain modes, not all of them, player 1 would be Donkey Kong and player 2 would be Diddy Kong. So yes, Diddy was there. And it was kind of notable that the songs in the game were all covers and for the most part just shortened versions of the proper songs, because I guess Nintendo didn't trust its players enough to actually sit through a full song. Wow, Donkey Konga predicted the TikTok era, didn't it? Now, each regional version of Donkey Konga featured a different set list, of course, so I'll be focusing on the US set list, which certainly ran the gamut of styles. Plenty of Nintendo songs, some pop songs, rock songs, and even some frickin' lullabies. And I think the European set list was honestly even wilder in some areas. I mean, they got the Jackson 5, Chumbawamba, September by Earth, Wind and Fire, Jamiroquai. But even though Donkey Konga 1 didn't have the best set list of the games, it did have some highlights. Among mine that I have listed here in my script, there's Like Wow by the late Leslie Carter, I Think I Love You by the Partridge Family I really enjoyed, Shining Star by Earth, Wind & Fire, so at least we got one Earth, Wind & Fire song. I would have preferred September though, I can't lie. You Can't Hurry Love by the Supremes, Right Here Right Now by Jesus Jones, The Impression That I Get by the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and Busy Child by the Crystal Method, who you'll come to learn the Donkey Konga team absolutely loved. And actually, it was this game that introduced me to one of my favorite bands, as it was the inclusion of All the Small Things by Blink-182 that first introduced me to their music. Of course, being a cover, it might not have quite nailed Tom's signature vocal style, but it was close enough. Boy, though, do I wonder what a cover of I Miss You would have sounded like in this game, because I love that song, but you almost can't sing it without making fun of it a little bit. Where are you? And I'm so sorry. I cannot sleep, I cannot dream tonight. And there were a couple mini games here, a 100-meter jungle climb where you were climbing on vines, a banana juggle where DK was obviously just juggling bananas, and Bash K. Rool, where you, well, take a guess, Bash K. Rool. Yeah, King K. Rool was actually here, how about that? They were cool, but they didn't really have a ton of staying power for me, because you didn't really get anything for playing them. Most of the appeal was in the main game, which was a lot of fun, and it won't be surprising to hear me say this about a Nintendo game, but obviously multiplayer is where this truly shines. I remember having a lot of fun playing it with friends and family back in the day, because of course it's a rhythm game, you know, music is awesome, you love kind of playing along to music, and it's a fairly accessible one. It's not crazy difficult, especially if you're playing it in 4-player settings. If you really want to give yourself a challenge, and I've talked about this in one video before, but if you have the means to do this, get 4 DK bongos and try to play a 4-player song by yourself. It sounds crazy, but you can do it. I think the only thing that really held this game back for me, and this is just one of my big problems in a lot of games like this, was the grind to unlock the harder versions of the songs. Like I said, you had 3 difficulty options here Monkey, Chimp, and Gorilla. It's Donkey Kong, of course they were called that. But the Gorilla difficulty versions of the songs were not available from the start. You had to basically buy them. Again, when you play the songs, you would get coins, and you could use those coins to buy the harder versions of the songs. And again, this is a very nitpicky thing. Maybe it's just the fact that I am a musician and I play a lot of rhythm games on the higher difficulties, but sometimes when you play so many rhythm games on a high difficulty, somehow the lower difficulties become harder because you're just so accustomed to blowing through the faster stuff like that. And again, a lot of the songs you don't get a lot of coins from, so you end up having to play the same song over and over a lot of times just to get enough coins to buy the harder versions of songs. It can be annoying, but it doesn't take away from the fun of the game. It's a very solid entry for the experimental era of Donkey Kong. And then 2005 was a big year for bongo-based Nintendo gaming, although the next two games that we'll talk about were both technically 2004 games in Japan. It's just that we got them here in America in 2005. But nevertheless, the first of the two was actually not a direct Donkey Konga sequel. It was another Donkey Kong game that just happened to use the bongos, and many of you probably know what I'm getting at when I say that. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Again, interestingly enough, this is technically considered a mainline Donkey Kong game. I'd personally say it was a mainline game. So essentially, this was the only mainline, main series entry in the Donkey Kong series in the 2000s, and it still didn't even really follow the status quo for the series. Much of the appeal of this game was that it was a full-fledged 2.5D Donkey Kong adventure platformer type game where you could use the DK bongos as a controller instead of a standard GameCube controller. Sure, you could use a regular controller, but where's the fun in that in a game like this? I mean, sure, the bongos can cause a lot of hand pain, but worth it. And the game is pretty much everything you would hope for and expect out of a Donkey Kong game. All of that is here in this game, except for minecarts. Officially not a mainline Donkey Kong game anymore. But the big unique part of it outside of the bongos is that beyond being a platformer, it's basically like a score attack kind of game. You collect bananas, or as they call them in the games, beats, that increase your score, and by doing certain like mid-air combos and things like that, you give yourself a multiplier that can basically increase the number of bananas you collect. Also, if you clap near bananas, then you kind of raise the value as well, which helps if you have a really good combo going. It's through the number of bananas that you're awarded crests at the end of each level. Bronze, silver, gold, and if you collect at least 1,200, a platinum crest that descends literally from the moon. And it adds a fun layer of challenge and complexity to a game that's otherwise fairly accessible. Like, you can play through the game for the most part without collecting all the medals and still have a fun time. Of course, you need to collect more medals to unlock more levels, and you have to get all of the platinum crests to get to the final boss, but there's still fun to be had with it even if you're not going for literally everything. And as you would expect out of a Nintendo game, the level design is consistently interesting and super fun to explore. I've been one of the biggest champions of Nintendo when it comes to level design because I feel like they just have some of the best in the business, and Jungle Beat is absolutely no different. These levels are incredibly memorable, incredibly fun to explore, they look amazing, it's really just a fantastic game, and a super underrated one at that. I don't think this one sold incredibly well, and it's a shame because it's really fun. And it got a re-release on the Wii under the new Play control line in 2009, so you could use the Wiimote and Nunchuck instead of the bongos, but it's just not the same. What's also really interesting to note about Jungle Beat, despite it not being a huge commercial success compared to other games in the series, is that this was made by Nintendo EAD Tokyo, the team that would go on to make Super Mario Galaxy. And I think if you've played both games, that would make a lot of sense, because Galaxy really built on a lot of what Jungle Beat had done previously. In a lot of ways, you can even kind of look at Jungle Beat as almost being like a prototype or like a proof of concept of what Galaxy would go on to do. And it's fascinating to kind of see them side to side and compare them in that way. It's obviously a great game in and of itself, but it's also great as, like I said, a test concept of what would become one of the greatest video games of all time, and a very high watermark in another one of Nintendo's most iconic franchises. Wow, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat walked so that Super Mario Galaxy could run, and now it seems like Super Mario Odyssey is about to walk so that Donkey Kong Bonanza can run. Nice to see them return the favor, and always fun to see how Nintendo's OGs can play off of each other. Now put them in a proper platformer together, goddammit. But also coming in 2005 after Donkey Kong Jungle Beat was a proper follow-up to Donkey Konga, Donkey Konga 2, a quickly released sequel that actually came less than a year after the original. I believe it came out here in America like 7 months after, but in most territories it was anywhere from about 7 to 9 months. And you kinda know Donkey Konga 2 feels like a fever dream as soon as you look at this box art right here, because it's the only game in the series, in the Donkey Kong series in general, that's rated T for teen by the ESRB. And of course, the reason it's rated T for teen is because of the mild sex and nudity. Wait, what? Oh, I see how it is. The ESRB has a double standard, guys. Because in this game, Dixie Kong is there, and that's why the game's rated T, because male monkeys running around without a pants, no problem. But when a female monkey does it, oh, the humanity. Think of the children. Of course, no, that's not the reasoning. ESRB does not have a double standard as far as I'm aware. In actuality, the game's rated T for teen because the song Boombastic by Shaggy still says go to hell. To their credit, they did do a good job censoring a lot of the shits and fucks and even parts of You Don't Have to Call by Usher where he says the N-word, but censoring hell and Boombastic is a bridge too far. Much like how PG-13 movies have a one fuck rule where you can say fuck one time, Nintendo has a one hell rule. You only get one. Just like how E for Everyone games have a one drat rule. If a game says drat more than once, they gotta get bumped up to E10. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. Anyway, right off the bat, I do actually love this cover art. I don't know why, but I think it's just that DK looks like he's having the time of his life here. Although I don't know, is he jumping at the screen? Is he jumping at the bongos? Is he about to destroy the bongos? I mean, the music in this game does go pretty hard, so I guess it would be that. As far as the game, of course, it's not a radical overhaul of the original, but it does have a fair few changes and new options here and there. There's a new freestyle mode for when you're mad at your parents, and there are minigames that actually have a purpose this time around, because when you play them, you actually are able to collect badges now. Those badges you can kind of put on yourself when you achieve a high score in the game or something like that. I've always been a bigger fan of the barrel race minigame as opposed to the Rhythm Keeper one. Barrel race, you have to hit as many notes as possible in a shorter amount of time, whereas Rhythm Keeper, you obviously have to keep rhythm with something without knowing what notes you're playing necessarily. But both are quite fun, and I always love hearing, "Match that badge!" when it's time to get the badges. It's also a blessing that the coin grinding is not as harsh this time around. You can actually get over 1,000 coins in even some very easy songs, which makes it easier to unlock the gorilla arrangements of some songs. And like I said, Dixie's here. Never get to play as her, which sucks, but I'm glad she's here. But of course, the big thing about Donkey Konga 2 that makes it so worth the discussion and makes it so unique is the set list. Because holy fuck, how the hell did this happen for a Donkey Kong game? Now look, I love the game's set list. It might honestly be one of my favorite rhythm game set lists, even if a lot of the songs are covers, and again, very much shortened versions of their original tracks. But how on earth did they make this happen? For those that don't know, Donkey Konga 2's Japanese title is Donkey Konga 2 Hit Song Parade. Thus, as you would expect, the game's going to include a lot of popular music that you'd probably be hearing on the radio back in the mid-2000s. And because of that, the US version is loaded with a lot of rock and R&B music to give the game more of a cool edge. I mean, as a kid, I didn't think twice about it. But a Donkey Kong game featuring songs from Smash Mouth, Shaggy, Hilary Duff, Trapped, R.E.M., Hoobastank, Mary J. Blige, Usher, Aaliyah, Pink, TLC, Amory, and Good Charlotte sounds like something that I imagine only came together because someone at Nintendo licked a frog as a joke, not realizing what the after effects would be. Hell, even the European version doesn't give you any breaks because that version of the game even includes songs from Depeche Mode, Elton John, and Britney Spears. They really covered a lot of bases. Let it not be forgotten that the only commercial the game got here in the States, it really wasn't promoted very much, featured Good Charlotte in it. You'd swear I'm talking out of my ass, but this actually happened. Also, I know it didn't sell super well, but My Chemical Romance played the game, and with this kind of evidence, how could you possibly believe that Donkey Konga was anything other than a cultural phenomenon? But honestly, as goofy as the soundtrack was, I feel like this game shaped my music taste a lot, both in my youth and in my adult life. As a kid, I liked a lot of the rock songs that in some cases are probably now unbelievably corny, like Headstrong by Trapped, It's Been a While by Stained, Send the Pain Below by Chevelle, Pieces by Hoobastank, which I'm still shocked is made by the same band that made I Found a Reason for Me. and again, the pair of Good Charlotte songs, Predictable and the Anthem, the latter of which I still really love. Some of the softer songs are also big favorites of mine, like Losing My Religion by R.E.M., Sidewalks by Story of the Year, and the pair of Incubus songs, Wish You Were Here and most especially Drive, which I still go back to quite a bit these days. Some other notable ones that I enjoy include the iconic All-Star by Smash Mouth, even though it's not a great cover, Come Clean by Hilary Duff, and Road Trip by Stereogram. And even the two songs from Crystal Method, like I mentioned earlier. They really love the Crystal Method. But they have two songs here, High Roller and Born Too Slow, the latter being my favorite of the two. But of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this game is an R&B lover's dream. I've said it before that I adore R&B music, and I feel like this game fueled a lot of that love. You give me Full Moon by Brandy, Hit 'Em Up Style Oops by Blue Cantrell, No More Drama by the Queen Mary J. Blige, Rock the Boat by another Queen Aaliyah, R.I.P., You Don't Have to Call by one of my favorite artists, Usher, Unpretty by TLC, and one of my favorite songs in Why Don't We Fall in Love by Amory, and honestly, I don't really need much more than that. Well, okay, you could have thrown in one or two Destiny's Child songs, but still, what's here is good. I know, the soundtrack is really out of place for Donkey Kong, and the fact that the Donkey Konga 2 theme is the only video game song in the setlist is certainly bizarre, especially compared to the first game, but I can't help falling in love with this soundtrack because of how it so heavily shaped my music taste. And the fact that the game is so fun and these songs are so great to play is just icing on the cake. I stand by it that this is the best of the Donkey Konga games, and it's a very underrated title that I'm sad to see didn't do bigger numbers than it did. And it's because it didn't do those big numbers that the next, and also final entry, Donkey Konga 3 was never released here in America. Something child me knew all too well because I used to watch a lot of videos of this game on game trailers back in the day, but obviously I was never able to get it. And while I love Donkey Konga, I do understand why the game was never localized. Beyond the fact that Reggie never liked the games to begin with, Donkey Konga was already fairly niche, and the second game barely got any promo to begin with. Like I said, it really only got like one commercial. Honestly, at the time it came out, I was just starting to read Nintendo Power, and I feel like even they barely acknowledged it, even though it was a first-party game. Plus, it was so close to the end of the GameCube's life that Nintendo probably just found it prudent to focus on the upcoming Revolution, or Wii as it would end up being known, then push another boulder up another mountain. Thus, Donkey Konga 3 stayed in Japan and never came anywhere else. Now, many years later, I was finally able to play Donkey Konga 3. What emulation? You can't prove anything, I'm clean! And finally getting to play it was super gratifying, and I enjoyed my time with it, even if I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the last one. It might help that because I played the game in its native language without an English translation, I didn't quite understand some of the game's new features, like the banana tree minigame. You use combos you get from the main game to grow a banana tree and then try to shoot out of a cannon to hit it, I think. It was kind of hard to tell without an English translation. Still, it brought a lot of the fun that Donkey Kong always brings, and Funky Kong's here this time. That automatically makes it the game of the century because Funky Kong is the GOAT and he needs to be in more games. And setlist-wise, I do think this game at least had a more fitting and appropriate for a Donkey Kong game soundtrack than 2 did, even if I liked 2's setlist a lot more. This at least felt more like a soundtrack for a Donkey Kong game than a soundtrack for a rhythm game that had Donkey Kong's name slapped on it. There was a decent variation of styles between J-pop, anime themes, classical tunes, which Donkey Konga always had plenty of, and yes, even video game songs. J-pop songs kind of took up most of the set list, but there were some that I really enjoyed, like Hana by Orange Range, which is probably my favorite of the bunch, Baka Survivor by Ulfuls, which was apparently the theme of Bo 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 Bo, Start by Rina Ayuchi, the theme of Detective Conan, and Tomorrow by Maya Okamoto. And of course, like I said, there were anime songs. Of course, out of them, you gotta love Chala Head Chala, the theme of Dragon Ball Z. Amazing song. But I also loved Ashira ni Natara, the opening to the old Donkey Kong show, Mesaze Pokemon Master, which was the classic Pokemon song, and Kite Kite Atashinchi, the ending theme of Atashinchi. And of course, there were a few more video game songs this time around, and some really great ones at that. It was obviously great to hear the Melee theme, the Donkey Kong Jungle Beat theme, Star Fox Assault's theme, and the new Donkey Konga theme for this game, Donkey's Groove, which was a lot of fun. It's also listed as a commercial song for some reason in the game's menu, but I do also like the Fire Emblem theme that's here, and it's pretty cool that the game does allow you to unlock classic Famicom songs. I was never able to unlock all of them because I didn't really know how to. I couldn't find a guide online or anything like that. But it's pretty cool to have them here. I do honestly wonder what a US-based soundtrack for this game would have looked like, Because while we know the game as Donkey Konga 3 JP, Japan, the Japanese subtitle after Donkey Konga 3, and I apologize if I butcher this pronunciation, is Tabai Hodai Haru Mogitate Goju Kyokyu, which translates to all you can eat springtime freshly picked 50 songs. So given that Donkey Konga 2 followed the hit song Parade part of the Japanese title, I wonder what an Americanized springtime setlist would have looked like for a game like this. I guess we'll never know. But again, after this game, the DK Bongo era of gaming was kind of over. I mean, yeah, you see some videos online of people being like, hey, look at me, I'm playing Elden Ring with DK Bongos, but otherwise, it was the end of Nintendo making games that use the DK Bongos. There was going to be one more called DK Bongo Blast for the GameCube, but it was cancelled, moved to the Wii, and retitled Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. A game I only played a little bit of, so I don't know with full certainty if it would have been better with the bongos, but I know I probably would have been more interested in it if it used the bongos. Thus, Donkey Kong has kind of fallen into obscurity. But Nintendo, across the Switch era especially, has revived a lot of obscure franchises. I mean, the fact that they revived Famicom Detective Club was pretty crazy. So given that they did that, could a Donkey Konga revival come on the Switch too? I'm honestly going to hold back on believing it. Because first of all, Nintendo's already charging a lot of money for games and accessories on the Switch 2 as it is. A Donkey Konga bundle with a pair of DK Bongos would probably be super expensive. And it feels like peripheral-based gaming just isn't exciting enough to justify the increase in price anymore. It just feels like there's not as much demand for those kind of games, which is sad, but, you know, that's the reality we live in. Plus, it kind of feels like, for a lack of a better way of putting it, Donkey Konga no longer has a void to fill. One element of Donkey Konga that was kind of notable at release was that, like I said earlier, it was an Americanized version of Taiko no Tatsujin, at a time when that series had rarely even been localized. It was even developed by the same team that made the Taiko series. In the last decade or so, though, Taiko has seen several entries release here in the United States, and these titles have even included Nintendo songs in them. So a Nintendo game that is like Taiko but is not called Taiko and features Nintendo characters might seem a little unnecessary given that Namco and Nintendo work so well together and that Taiko is now a bigger thing here in America and releases on the Switch pretty regularly. It's probably more likely that Nintendo just lets Namco use Donkey Kong characters in a new Taiko game than actually making a new Donkey Konga. Still, as someone who grew up with these games, it does make me happy when Nintendo remembers elements of Donkey Konga, like the DK Bongos being part of Donkey Kong's Final Smash and a few of the Smash Bros. Games, the DK's Conga Line minigame in Super Mario Party Jamboree featuring bongos, and that bongo-based game you can play at Super Nintendo World at Universal. It may not quite be a proper Donkey Konga game, but at least the spirit of Donkey Konga lives on. If anything, now that GameCube games are coming to Switch Online with the Switch 2, just put the Donkey Konga games on there. That could be fun. So, Donkey Konga was a fun, very underrated, niche franchise that I really enjoyed. But it wasn't merely just a game I had some fun with as a kid that I wanted to talk about in a video. One of the things that makes Donkey Konga super important to me, and why it's a notable game outside of the goofiness of it or the fun of it, is that it felt like this game was actually my first little nudge into actually becoming a musician of any kind, playing music and learning music. As a kid, I didn't really think about, oh, what do I like in music or what do I look for in music? I just, let my mom play whatever CD she wanted to play in the car and just kind of nodded along to it. These games obviously shaped the kind of music I would go on to enjoy, but also kind of, again, gave me that push into wanting to actually play music. Around the time that I first played Donkey Konga, I actually attempted guitar lessons, didn't quite work out, but it was after that point that I took up the drums, which I obviously really enjoyed, and I played for several years. I haven't gotten to play as much recently, but I would like to for some videos in the future, maybe, if time and money would allow for it. Though I do still have my old drum covers on here on this channel if you want to go check them out. And obviously I went to a music high school where I continued to pursue percussion, and most notably, when I was in my school's jazz band, I most often played on the, you guessed it, bongos. It all comes full circle. I went from playing on Nintendo fake bongos to actually playing real bongos in my school's jazz band and actually going out to certain events and stuff and concerts with my school's jazz band where I was playing on the bongos. That was really fun. And to think there's a chance I would have never pursued music in general had it not been for this goofy little GameCube game over here. If not for this, I never would have really known that I enjoyed music, or that I liked making it, or playing along to it. And honestly, I think in a way, it sounds weird to say like this, but in a way, who knows if this channel would even be what it is if it wasn't for this game. Because obviously I review music on this channel. And, you know, maybe I wasn't always someone when I was a kid who reviewed music, but again, maybe music would not have been as important of a piece of my life if this game didn't give me that first little nudge into really enjoying music. So to that end, Donkey Konga will always be a very special game to me. I still really enjoy playing them. I go back to them from time to time, and they're really fun. But it's not merely that they're fun games. It's that they are super important to myself, my life, and my development of myself and the things that I enjoy doing, and my skills. So in a lot of ways, I feel like Donkey Konga is a game I have to thank. I know Reggie might not like it, but, you know, it's the classic case of every movie or video game or album, with very few exceptions, is someone's favorite. I mean, granted, this isn't my favorite game, but, you know, it's kind of one of those things where, hey, just because one person doesn't like it, or just because the president of a company doesn't like it, doesn't mean it can't impact someone else in a great way. And this game has had an indelible impact on me that I will probably never forget. But that, of course, is all just my opinion on the Donkey Konga franchise. What did you guys think about it? Again, I know it was very niche, so did you guys play it growing up? Did you discover it after its life? Do you enjoy it? Do you not enjoy it? Are you indifferent toward it? What's your favorite entry in the series, and what's your favorite rhythm game in general? Again, it could be one of the games in this franchise, but, you know, there's plenty of rhythm games out there, so what's your favorite? Whatever your thoughts, opinions, and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And yeah, I'm not committing to this part fully, but on the topic of rhythm games, because this is another franchise that was super impactful to me, I have contemplated doing a video on Guitar Hero and obviously Rock Band as well, so that could come in the future. I don't want to commit to it right now or say that it's going to be my next video. If anything, I think as far as new longer videos to look forward to on the horizon, well, we're, as of the time of the filming of this video, only about a week away from June, and you know what June is. It's not E3 season. There's going to be some gaming showcases this month, so if we get some, I know we're going to get the Xbox show, and I'll do a video on that. I'm sure we're going to get a State of Play or some kind of PlayStation event sometime soon. I've been hearing talk about that. And I'm sure Nintendo's going to have a Direct at some point, either after the release of the Switch 2 or around the Switch 2's release. So I'll be doing videos on those. Again, other kind of videos that I have planned might not come right away because I'll be busy with those. But definitely looking forward to doing that. And hopefully, again, if time allows for it and if money can allow for it as well, I'd like to keep doing longer videos. I'll try to continue to post as much as I can, and if I can't, then I'll obviously give you guys community posts and updates letting you know where I'm at or what's coming or what have you. And of course, I've got short reviews that I'm going to be doing whenever new albums come out, so that'll be something to look forward to as well. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.